Welcome to Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde, bringing you the jazz and swing scene from the Capital Region. Jeff and Andre, thank you guys so much for being willing to speak with me before your gig here at Grappa 72.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for interviewing us.
Thanks for having us.
Andre, will you share where you're coming from today?
I'm from South Africa, born in Cape Town, but I live in Johannesburg.
Very neat. And is this your first time in upstate New York?
This is my first time in upstate New York. Not my first time to the US, but my first time to upstate New York.
Okay, and you're here to play with Jeff, or do you have a lot of gigs set up?
I'm here for different reasons, but I'm here today, upstate New York, to play with the great Jeff Siegel.
Yes. Now, Jeff, how did you guys get connected?
Well, let's see. I had a tour this summer in South Africa with my sextet, and Andre teaches in Johannesburg at the University of Wits. And last minute, before the tour, my trumpet player, who's from South Africa, had a medical problem, and he wasn't able to play. And so we had to get some substitute trumpet players from South Africa kind of last minute, and we needed to rehearse them. They didn't know the music, and Andre was good enough to let us rehearse at his university in South Africa, and that's where we first met.
Very cool. Now, Jeff, you've been playing around the Capital Region for quite a while. Can you share a little bit about your history here?
Back in the 70s, the 1870s, I think, actually, no, the 1970s. After I got out of school, SUNY Albany, I graduated, and I made bagels for a couple of years and was practicing to get ready to move to New York, and was playing around, had bands around then, and played in other folks' bands, and all of a sudden I got on my first record date, and immediately moved to New York that night. I got fired from my gig making bagels in Albany and moved overnight to New York City. And so then it was quite a while. I started to come up state to Albany with a great musician from New York I was working with named Arthur Rames. And then in the 90s, I moved to Woodstock in 1990 from Brooklyn, and started to then come back to the Capital Region, which I always loved this area and the people, and I don't know, it was like sort of a second home to me. I'm not from upstate, and doing different things, a little bit with Nick Brignola, J.R. Montrose I had met in the 80s and played with him a little bit, and then a little bit in the early 90s till he passed. And then different people along the way in the 90s. And then in 2001, I met Lee Shaw. Rich had recommended me, Rich Syracuse, bass player I work with frequently, and I started to work steadily in Lee's trio from 2001 until she passed about 3 or 4 years ago, and that's how this gig here came about, because we used to play here with Lee until she passed, and Andre's going to play her piano tonight, her electric piano. So I've been, a long history coming up here, and it feels like almost like a second home, It's something I always look forward to coming back to Albany to play. I have a lot of friends up here.
Yeah, and Andre, I'm curious to hear what the scene is like for your city. And you were describing a scene as adventurous, and I like that word, because every city, of course, has a different flavor. So how might you describe your hometown, if that's indeed where you grew up, and the scene today?
I started playing early 2000s, and I primarily have a classical music background, so that was my foundation. And when I started, a lot of the older jazz musicians in Cape Town, where I'm originally from, were still around. So I was very fortunate to be able to play with them, and outside of a school environment. And they were very sharing and giving of their time and information, and I think they were really keeping an eye out for the next generation, because they knew they were at the end of their lives, basically. So that was where I came up from. And then, as Jeff was saying, there's a lot of school and education that also started developing over the last 15, 20 years. Now in Cape Town and Johannesburg, there's a lot of young musicians who also have the benefit of exposure and traveling, which wasn't something you necessarily saw for South African musicians. Of course, during the apartheid era, it was almost impossible for a musician to travel and come back to the country, especially playing jazz. Jazz was seen as protest music.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, outside of South Africa, people like Abdullah Ibrahim, Miriam Makeba, Yuma Sikela, their music was not just entertainment, it was socially relevant, and it made people aware of what was going on in South Africa. And that was, of course, very annoying to the apartheid government. So the music itself was fulfilling different functions. Within the country, the music was a source of hope and inspiration and comfort to a lot of musicians and just people in general, ordinary South Africans. And outside of the country, it made them aware of what was happening politically. So, what happened in the 90s, middle 90s onwards, you started to see more music schools, and certainly from 94, as we changed government, started seeing a lot of jazz education, a lot of exile musicians came back home, and that set a certain momentum. So, to answer your question, where is that today? Vibrant and very exciting. A lot of young musicians writing beautiful music, releasing their own albums, and Johannesburg, in particularly, where I'm based now, teaching at the university. A lot of young people coming through from all over the country, and very excited. And like I said, exposed to so much. We have so many jazz festivals now in South Africa as well, and it gives an opportunity for great musicians like Jeff and Ira Coleman and those kinds of musicians to come through to South Africa, and that was also something you didn't see before. The older generation couldn't experience that. So it's a number of things. Traveling being easier now, exposure, people studying in different parts of the world. It's creating a vibrant scene for young people. The internet is allowing people to communicate more easily. And so it's vibrant, it's alive, and there's some interesting young South African musicians who are writing music that is socially conscious for their generation. So
That's really fascinating to hear that part of the history, or jazz being used as almost a political act in a sense, because I'm thinking of Billie Holiday in the States in the late 1930s and singing Strange Fruit, and in the ways in which a lot of artists were involved in trying to fight Jim Crow laws. And so also hearing about how it's been used as something almost in protest or pushing against the day.
Sure. I mean, the music's got different functions, and it's not only that, But with the younger generation, it's interesting because we don't have those laws anymore. So what exactly are you protesting? And that's also interesting to see how the nature of the narrative is changing as the reflection is different now. So you're not forbidden, you're not stopped from running onto a beach that was reserved for whites only. You can sit on any bus you want. Those were things that were, visibly, externally imposing a dominance over your well-being in your life. But now with those things removed, there's still a feeling that there's an invisible prison that is the outworking of that is the economic situation. So so those young people are now looking at what's happening economically, and their music is starting to deal with issues of social justice through economic reform and those kinds of things. So that's interesting for me as well, to see how the narrative has changed.
Yes. Jazz offers such an interesting lens for me to be able to see the world and how it's changing. Now I know it's 6 o'clock and we're about to, I know you need to start getting ready for your gig, but is there anything either of you would like to add for Six Count?
I would just say that there is an audience, a jazz audience up here that's as supportive and committed to this music as it's very inspiring, the audience. And when I think back when I was getting started, it was like that too. It's always a special place to come back to.
Very neat. Now I forgot to ask one more question. Where can people find you besides this wonderful restaurant on the regular?
I'm often playing with Rich Syracuse in a little series we have at Catskill Mountain Pizza Company in Woodstock. Right now we're there twice a month. The dates change. And I have a website, jeffsiegeljazz.us. It's SIEGEL.
Because you also go by the Siege.
Siege, yeah, it's a nickname I got in Italy my very first time playing in Italy. I had this trio called Stevens. Actually, it was called the Tim Ferguson Trio at that time. We called it by the bass player's name because his girlfriend booked the first tour in Italy. So we show up at our first gig, and it said Tim Ferguson Basso, on the poster. This place, Rosa Rosa. The pianist's name was Michael Stevens. It said Michael Stevens, Pianista, and for batteria, for the drums, it just had one word, Siege. It's like somehow our first gig there Jeff Siegel turned into Siege, and my friend said, "That's it. From now on, that's your name or your nickname." So it just became like a thing, and actually the only nickname I ever liked, but got some funny responses over the years to that nickname. So.
I love it. Now, Andre, I know that not all of us might be able to go travel the world, but here you are in upstate New York. So where might you suggest people find your music, even if it's just online?
You can check me on Facebook and just Google Andre Peterson. You'll find me. And I just want to say it's an honor for me to be here with Jeff and, of course, the great Ira Coleman as well. A funny story is I was at the Cape Town International Jazz Festival in 2000, and Ira Coleman was playing with Herbie Hancock.
Oh, wow.
And I was in the audience looking at this band thinking, wow, this is amazing. And of course, I'm a big Herbie Hancock fan, so that was a dream come true to see him live. And of course, I saw the bass player and the rhythm section was amazing, and I thought, wow. And, years later, here I am playing with him. So that to me is really something special. So thank you once again to the Siege for inviting me, and we're going to have a good time. We'll play some South African music as well, just to bring a little flavor from home, and I hope people enjoy it.
Yes, I can't wait to listen. Good luck with the gig, and thank you both so much.
Thank you, Xara, for having us and for what you're doing to help promote jazz music, and it's really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Xara. Nice to meet you,
Thank you.
And thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening to Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde. We'd like to thank Giants of Jazz Radio, based in Lancashire, England, for airing this show. The station brings you the best in classic jazz, playing tracks from the 1940s through the 70s. You can support the station by visiting their website at giantsofjazzradio.co.uk and clicking Donate. You can let me know what you thought of the episode or who I should speak to next by emailing me. I'm at sixcountpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at sixcountpodcast.